All right.
Hello and oh, okay, we'll start. Hello and welcome to Make More Love, Not War. Today we have Clay and Sonja Arnold with us for the third time. We're doing our trifecta of communication. So we started with mirroring, and then the next one was validating, and today we are tackling empathy. So Clay and Sonja, please remind us of who you are and where you come from, and then we'll just kind of go over mirroring and validating before we get into empathy.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So we're Clay and Sonja, Heart Life Coaching, and we believe that, yeah, marriage is something that's amazing and should be enjoyed, and you should thrive rather than just survive it and endure it. And a lot of times it's skills that people don't have. Not that they're married to the wrong person or that they're bad people, but that they just don't have the skills. So that's kind of what we're all about. Um, and yeah, I'm excited to get into empathy. It is one of our favorite topics.
And remind us what your YouTube channel is called.
It's Heart Life Coaching DFW, stands for Dallas Fort Worth. So we kind of started before we were all over the world, when we were just in our little North Texas world. But yeah, Heart Life Coaching DFW.
Okay, so those of you who are listening to this on our podcast can also access this video on their YouTube channel if you want to see our beautiful faces too.
See how amazing these guys look.
And you too. We're all awesome. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
so last time we covered mirroring and then validation. So if y'all wouldn't mind providing a little nutshell on that before we
Sure.
go into empathy, that would be awesome.
The whole goal of what we've been talking about is to be able to talk without criticism, how to really listen without judgment, and how to connect beyond our differences, which is the number one reason why couples have conflict. So we're talking about these three tools and how to do that in a space that's safe to connect so that we can communicate. And we need that progression. The safety's got to be there in the space between us so that we can connect and then we can effectively communicate. If safety and connection's not there, good luck communicating. And we already have the challenge, as we talked about in one of the last videos we did with you, was discussing that we retain about 20% of what we hear, and if you're in a good mood. And if anything's emotionally charged, that can drop marginally. So it's really important to work on bringing that safety and connection to the space. One of the first things we have talked about that is mirroring. And by that, we're talking about not just parenting somebody, but being able to relate back to what you hear with accuracy to make sure that your listening is effective. And I love mirroring because it helps us to avoid the little lawyer and analyst that we have on our shoulder. Because if Sonja's talking to me and I'm preparing rebuttal because I'm irritated at it or I'm figuring out how to fix it, I'm not listening. And the only way I've learned to get rid of those guys is to do the mirroring so that I can really be engaged in listening to be able to do that. And we talked specifically about some sentence stems that we use to do that, which have been researched over the past 40 years to be able to do that effectively. And those sentence stems we talked about on one of the other podcasts was, let me see if I got that. You said, did I get it? And is there more about that? And then be able to give a recap at the end. And by utilizing those sentence stems, what we're actually doing in our brain is we're integrating ourselves from being stuck in the emotional part of our brain and getting us up to the frontal cortex, where we find win-wins and solutions, and we're really able to effectively connect with each other at a different level. But we also talked about validation.
And then validation. So once you've heard your partner and you've really been able to listen to them and they've kind of shared all that they want to share, and they know that they're heard and they know that they're listened. So validation is one of the key things in that you may not agree with what they said, but you are giving the right to that they have a right to have their own opinion. They have a right to have their viewpoint. They have a right to have their own experience. And the sentence stems that we encourage people to use for that one is, well, that makes sense. And again, it might not make sense to you, but you are saying, well, it makes sense based on what you've just told me. And if it doesn't make sense to you that they make sense, then sometimes you just need to listen more. And sometimes you need to hear more.
Be more curious.
Yeah. And so that's the validation step that is often hard for people because we often want to be right. We don't want you to be right. We want me to be right. And we want you to think the same thing as I think.
And that's such a huge point, because when somebody, what they're saying to us, we don't agree with it, or it doesn't make sense to us with it too, we tend to take that personal as an attack against our personhood. And it's really not that. It's just that they've had different life experiences, different growing up with their caretakers. Who knows what all's contributing to that, to get the perspective that they have. So if I come at it from curiosity point of view instead of being right, then that changes all the ways I interact with that.
And you do have to move away from right. If I have to be right, then you have to be wrong. But you can both be right, even if they're opposing views, because they're your views. And sometimes we do have to talk a little bit more, especially you have to come to a decision together. Then it requires a little bit more understanding and have a little bit, but oftentimes you come up with not solution A or B, but you come up with solution F, G.
Yeah, I love how people argue with me about that with it too, but it's like, that's not how life works with it. That's like, well, okay, let's talk about light. Light's measured in particles as well as waves. How can that, they're both opposing things. How can that be? So
That's deep.
We're filled with all kinds of natural antinomies in our world, in our culture. Why not this?
Yeah.
Why we both have a different perspective, and that be okay?
Yeah, it's the beauty of gray.
The beauty of gray, exactly. And the beauty of all of our colors, actually, because so differences is not a bad thing. We can make differences to be great and wonderful and an ally rather than something that creates conflict. Because oh yeah, it's great that you see it that way. Yeah, it's great that you want to have everything in its place all over the office. It's also great that I am very, very busy, so I have piles all over the place.
And it's also great that I have my little area that I don't want your crap on my desk either. So there we go.
Yes, so there's the compromise, right? There's where you figure out how to honor each other's needs because you listened through it and understood that Sonja has this way of organizing things and Clay has a different way, and they're both okay. It's just figuring out how to work together. Just like Jeff and I, we brainstorm in very different ways, and we work together on a lot of projects, and his energy and my energy are just very different. So we're always trying to adjust to that. Of just like he wants to go from 0 to 100, let's get there, and I'm like, I need to have little bits, and then I need to go off and think about it, and I need to process, and then I need to come back, and I get overwhelmed, and he's giving me all these ideas, and he's like, that's brainstorming, and I'm like, but that's overwhelming. So even understanding how we just process language differently and communicate differently, that's that meta higher level of figuring out, oh wait, we even have different, the way that tone affects us and all of that stuff is different, and that's okay.
Yeah,
and who we are in our personalities contributes a lot to that too, because of if you're a big picture person and a visionary, you're going to do that pretty rapid fire, I have found.
Yes, that's him.
And people like me, I'm a very detailed person and very, very anal about it when I do it. So I want to break it down into not only points, but mini points to go with the point. And kind of slow it down a little bit. And either one are fine, but just that processing and that difference in the way we do it can make a big difference.
Yeah, and I found asking for permission, is now a good time for me to share an idea? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not.
When I've just woken up without a cup of coffee, yes.
And I have all these big ideas in my mind. Jeff, I don't know if you do this, but just I've been processing. It's oh, I had this great idea. And I'll just go off and start talking about it. And then Clay's yeah. And so by just saying, just oh, leading in, oh, can we talk about this idea I have about work, about the family, about Christmas? Then it's just kind of oh my gosh, let's pause and then let's eat breakfast and then we can talk about it.
Right, which is where, the empathy comes in, right? Of each having empathy for each other's experience.
Mhm.
Sonia, you having empathy for Clay's feeling of overwhelm, like, oh, okay, that's really deeply uncomfortable for him. And what can I do to help with that so that we can come together around being able to discuss Christmas or what was it, pumpkin bread last time? Just like whatever thing it is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, well, that was a good segue into, yeah, let's talk about empathy.
Yes.
how do you see empathy being? I'm just curious. Well, Jeff, how do you define empathy?
Hmm.
I'm going to interview
I
the interviewer. There you go.
well, I mean, to me, empathy is, understanding how the other person feels. That's the way I would define it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Is that
So, yeah,
how would you define it?
and allowing space for that. I love that.
Yes. And
Yeah.
also there's the cognitive aspect, which is the perspective taking.
Mhm.
So to me, there's a few different aspects. There's the emotional and then there's the cognitive. So the understanding of how people feel is emotional, and some people can also feel people's feelings, which I resonate with that, where I can like just feel the energy coming from Jeff and I'm like, I know how he feels. So that's that empathy that flows through you. And some people are higher or lower on the scale for that. And then there's that perspective taking cognitive aspect where you're processing through cognitively. And if you don't have the empathy that flows, that's okay. You can have the cognitive, and that's enough too. That's how I see it.
Yeah. This being able to have empathy is one of the most important relational skills we can develop, I think, with it too. Because for me, it's not only what you were saying, Jeff, about being able to understand the feelings. I've kind of added to that understanding their perspectives too, and
Right.
having that go together. And that's been a growing edge for me because, like, okay, I'll understand what you feel about it, but I think your idea is dopey, But that's where I used to would go with it too. But now I'm finding that, especially depending on what we're talking about, that being able to relate and try to understand both is enormously important. Whether I agree with it or not, again, is another thing. But I want her to be able to have that, generate that safety in doing that, and that connection in doing that, so that relationally we build things instead of tearing each other down. Part of that. How much for you?
Yeah, because I think in our relationship, it's like one of us, which most relationships are like this. One is the more feeling person than the other. And so in our relationship, Clay is the more feeling person. So it's not gender bias there, but it is like, but just understanding that somebody, Clay has many more, like 10 times more feelings in a day or in an hour than I would have in a day. And so being able to really be okay with that and really be having empathy for all those emotions and all those feelings that he has, whereas I don't have to feel them. I don't have to feel them. I don't have to get into them, but I can also just allow the space, and I can have curiosity and wonder about all those emotions and all those feelings, and which kind of would feel overwhelming to me if I was feeling them. So but the sentence stems that we like to use for the empathy piece is, well, I can imagine. I can imagine. So it's like I can't know those feelings. I can't experience those. I'm not going to tell him how he feels, or you're not going to
I
certainly
know
tell.
exactly how you feel. No, you don't.
And so, but just like, oh, I can imagine that would feel overwhelming, or I can imagine that would feel hurtful when that happened. And then are those your feelings? But allowing that space to communicate with each other, and kind of this idea of like, if you're in a room and you're each seeing out a window, and each of you are seeing different things out your window, and you really can't see out their window, and they might say, oh yeah, I'm seeing a river, or I'm seeing the sunshine, and then I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm seeing a tree and a wall. And so you can't say, well, no, you're wrong, but it's like, oh yeah, the only way you can know what they're seeing is if you listen, and if you've listened and you've allowed them to have your view through validation, then you can go to that curiosity of, well, tell me more. How does that make you feel? What is that going on with you there? And not by digging and not by pushing, but just by allowing yourself to listen and to be there
Mhm.
with them.
It's that intention of connection, especially when it comes to empathy. Because I care about you, because I want our relationship to grow. Before I even get to whatever we're talking about, I want to have a hard intention to understanding you as fully as I possibly can with that too, including what you're feeling.
Yeah.
That's a challenging thing when people personality wise, or they've been in a space where it's hard for them to do feelings. This can be a real challenging part of the process with it too. And I know when we do this with couples and we get them to it, if somebody's struggling with that, and you probably use this in your counseling practice too. I've got like a sheet of feelings.
Oh, yes. I have a pillow
Faces
in
on
my
them, and
therapy
like,
room that,
okay,
yeah.
pick one of these.
Yes, it has the feelings circle on it. And I'm like, here's the pillow.
Because some people, it's a really challenging thing if they've
Yes.
grown up with a lot of trauma or things like that, where feelings were just not okay to
Yeah.
experience
Not
and
safe to feel. Yeah.
not safe to feel exactly. And this is a hard space to go to when you come with that. So if you're listening to this and you are in that space, just relax. You're okay with that too. But it is a growing edge, and it's important to be able to go ahead and go to that space for the sake of the connection in your relationship with that. So
Because that's kind of where the collaboration can come from. You have to really be able to understand their point of view, to really be able to kind of understand that emotional space, that because sometimes it's not always about what we've said or we've experienced, but like you're kind of saying, it's those tones, it's those underlying ripples that kind of cause things. I mean, it's one thing, I guess one example that we used to use, back when we had to pay for long distance, is like, oh yeah, you could always say, we're going to cut down our long
oh, you're
distance.
kind of old, aren't you?
I know.
Oh.
When it wasn't just all in,
We remember that.
remember that. And then but then you're like, okay, on paper, it sounds like wonderful. I mean, okay, yeah, we can trim down this long distance, but then if you live far away from your mom, and then you're like, oh, well, I didn't know that it meant that I wouldn't be able to talk to her weekly. But then sometimes you don't even understand until you're having this budget and discussion that this is an emotional thing. So empathy and understanding can lead to these discussions on all the things that we have to talk about, our finances, our kids, our discipline, our in-laws, all these things. That emotional aspect is such a key proponent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so you also brought up a great point, Sonia, that I'd like to go deeper into, which is that I think that something that is a struggle with empathy is the thought that I have to take on the other person's emotion, especially for me as a feeling person. I've had to learn how to not to be like, okay, those are Jeff's feelings or those are whoever's feelings. I'm not taking them in. And I developed this visual for that called the hero's cup, which is when somebody has a cup of feelings and you have your cup, their cup is full of feelings. So this could be you and Clay, Sonia. So you have your cup that's empty and Clay's is full. And what he's wanting to do is just pour some of that liquid into your cup so that you can look at it and be like, oh, okay, I can see what that is. I'm creating a space for it in my cup. But you don't have to drink that liquid. You don't have to take his emotions in. You don't have to do anything with them. You don't have to make him feel better. You don't have to shift it. You don't have to lighten the mood. You don't have to do anything. You're just looking at it and you're saying, those are there and they are real. And, I can imagine how it must feel to have that in your cup. And then you get to pour it out or pour it back into his cup, or maybe both of you are now pouring it out because he's processed it with you and you created like the ability to release it and now it's released. Or maybe he needs to hold it a little bit longer because he's still working through it, but it's not yours.
It's not mine. I love that.
That's great.
That is a really great visual
Yeah.
about my cup, and I don't have to like keep a lid on it. I mean, I don't have to like
Don't have to drink it.
I definitely,
Yeah.
but I can like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I like that. Thank you.
Is that kind of how you guys maneuver? How do you maneuver feelings like that? I'm just curious.
You want me? Okay.
One of you.
I want to give you space to talk. Well, so that is pretty much how I do it. Being a therapist, I encounter heavy feelings all the time. And so therapists called it like holding space, but it's kind of the same thing as the cup where I'm creating, I have to empty my own cup as much as I can, or be aware of what's in my cup at the very least, to be able to um, create space there for somebody else's, which is why when for couples, when somebody says, is this a good time, it allows people to empty their cups or create space in their cups for somebody else. So I have to regulate myself to be in a place to hear the other person's feelings, and then I have to remind myself these are not my feelings to take in, so I don't need to do anything to make somebody else feel better. So that's the cognitive thing I'm going through with myself, so that I don't make a joke or argue it, or try to shut somebody down or shift somebody because I'm uncomfortable with their feelings. So they're not mine, they're theirs. I'm here to witness, and that is what they need. So I have to go through this whole little thing with myself. You have to do your own self-soothing and self-talk, and then I can be like, okay, my job is to mirror and validate, and then understand what they're feeling from that, and that's all I have to do. Their feelings are, they need to cope with their feelings, and they need their feelings to figure out what to do with their problem, or what to whatever. They need they need their feelings as theirs, not mine. So those are kind of the cognitive things I go through with myself.
I like that. That's really an important thing to mention.
Jeff, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really take on her feelings. I
He
mean,
naturally doesn't have to worry about that.
yeah, so it's not really a problem. I mean, I'm probably like the normal dude. She'll tell me these, so her feelings to me do come across as problems and problems. It's like, so it's the difficulty to be like, I'm not just going to work on, oh, well, why don't you just do this? So like, that's more the resistance of, for me than anything else, to let her explain it, but not go into like,
Fix it.
oh yeah, I'm ready to, oh, why are we even talking about this? This is what you do.
Didn't we talk about that last month?
Yeah, I thought this was done.
Right. Yes. Why
And
does
I
this
have the
keep coming up?
solution here. Let's just do
If you
this.
just did the solution, we won't even have to talk about it. So what's the
Yeah.
deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is what you have to work through, is to not shift my feelings by problem solving.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's what I've noticed, is people really, we care about each other, and we just want that. If it's considered a negative feeling, like disappointment or sadness or grief or something, we want that feeling to go away for the other person.
Yeah. And that's true both ways. So we'd use different tactics, where you're very empathetic. Jeff's going to be like, well, here's a problem. Let's fix it with it too. I don't want you feeling this way. And but we kind of take that as an affront to us, instead of, it's not, most of the time, not intended to be that. It's because I care about you and I want you to feel better. So I'm going to do whatever I can do to try to make that happen. Within my power, but it doesn't meet your need, though.
To not have those emotions, understood emotions,
Or
accepted.
be listened to.
Yeah, that it's okay. It's okay, the fact that you are feeling this way, and that makes sense. And to kind of like, especially if one of the people that's more feeling oriented, to like, oh yeah, I'm getting this. And I imagine you might also feel all these other things, and then check in, because that helps the non-feeling person to kind of put words to the feelings, but then you have to avoid the placing them on there. Well, I bet you feel angry about that. Well, no, I'm
But
just
you
feeling
qualify.
misunderstood.
You qualify that with a question: Are those your feelings?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
putting some out there, sometimes if you're not used to doing feelings with it too, then it's an easy to come to that and go, no, I don't feel that. I think it's more this.
Yeah, which is okay, right? I mean, the whole idea is that you're trying and you're just putting something out there. And if it's not right, then it gives allows the other person the space to kind of figure out, well, actually, no, I'm not feeling that way. And maybe they weren't even aware if they were or were not. And then they can explore further.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I like the quote that feelings fully felt fade. So to allow yourself to fully feel your feelings, and then they can, like you said, that you can process out of them if you discuss them and they're being understood. But what you resist persists. So if we're resistant of our feelings, or if someone else is resistant to our feelings, then that's going to stick around. So, and go back a couple of quite a while ago, where you said that whole thing about coming into a conversation with an empty cup. So that's doing the self-soothing. That's, dealing with our situation so that our feelings are current.
Mhm.
Our feelings are current in this moment, and not having all these feelings about what happened last week, even in our relationship,
Mhm.
because that's what's so happen is like something happens and you don't talk about it, and you don't talk about it, and you don't talk about it, and then it just kind of builds. It just builds,
Mhm.
and then you talk about something else, and then a problem that Clay might have, and then I'm like, well, what if that happened 2 years ago, where you
Yeah.
didn't listen to me, and that type of thing, and it's like you can't deal with
Like, what was that?
the present, like still holding that thing that happened 2 years ago. So being really, really quick to resolve the issues, and to talk about them, and to not hold on to them forever.
One of the cool fruit things that comes out of what you were talking about the self-soothing is it creates safety.
Mm.
When you do that for yourself and you do that self-talk and you get your cup where you can receive somebody's and look at them and do that, when you create that safety for yourself and making sure you're not overwhelmed by what you're going to get with it too, it creates safety for them at the same time. Because then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's okay for me to dump that into your cup and let you look at it so that you understand what's going on. So there's a dual safety thing that happens in the middle of that too. And when it comes to the space between, that's such an integral part of that. So then I can connect with you further because you've made that effort and you've created that safety for yourself as well as for me.
Right. Yes. And so sometimes we might be talking about something intense, and I just kind of step back, like literally step back just a little bit, and I just have to breathe. And I'm like, I need to breathe for a second. And I'll just do some breathing. And then something that I do inside myself too is I try to notice my own emotion and have compassion for it, so that I'm not feeling while he's trying to talk to me about how he's feeling. I'm not also filling my own cup with my feelings. I'm giving myself a second to process it. And I think that's really a very acceptable thing to do too, even if the other person's in the middle. If you're realizing that you're getting overwhelmed, just take a second and do some breathing and be like, okay, I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. I'm feeling this. And I also can put my hand over my heart and have a moment of compassion for myself. Like, these are hard feelings for me, or I'm really worried about him, or whatever is going on inside me, so that then I can come back and be like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah. When Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the thing that she also, when she explaining the cup analogy, is she said what to do, but what she also did not talk about is what a lot of people do that keep the conflict going, which is one person does pour it into the other person's cup, and then that other person, instead of doing the empathy and explaining and everything, they just throw it right back in their face. And that's what's keeps the thing going, because they're saying that's what, explaining like, oh, this is what you should do, this is what you're doing, that's a stupid thing that you're thinking. That's akin to taking the time, the person's pouring it into the thing, you're holding it, and you just go right in their face. And yeah, of course, that's not gonna go over good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or like in your example, Sonja, like Clay's telling you his feeling about something that's happening now, and you turn it around back on him and throw back what happened 2 years ago. Well, you did the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah,
You
that's the
know,
throwing it in their
Let me
face.
shame you and make you feel bad.
And then, yeah, of course. And then you're going to be like, I'm not good. Why am I bringing this stuff up again? No, you're just going to throw it right back in my face.
And that's what happens. We shut it down right there because all of a sudden that anxiety goes on because we had it dumped in our face and we're done connecting. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
That's
And
Yes.
why I
so,
always love this. I love
the
this thing that she came up with that. I thought that was just brilliant.
so the
Yeah.
person that has dumped the cup, though, they keep talking, and the other person's over here going, "I'm done.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can talk
Never
to you
mind.
blue in the
I'm not
face,
pouring
but
any more.
I'm not listening to a friggin' word you're saying. Have a nice day."
I'm also
Yeah.
thinking of this kind of cup metaphor that you used, and that's like if you, but and this is most of the time when you have a conversation, is that you kind of have feelings about this, or what the person is
And then
saying
you count.
is provoking feeling and emotion
Mhm.
in you. So your cup is getting filled in, and then if you put that in there, then it's all mixed together, and you're like, well, that's like what happens when you mix two colors of Play-Doh together and it's all gray and icky. And
Yeah.
it's like, what?
Said the school teacher. There you go.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like being able to keep my emotions separate from your emotions, I think is a trick. And kind of that when you were saying that, we don't want to throw it back at them, but we also want to allow it to stay separate and not be like, oh yeah, and then come back, but also knowing that we're going to have a chance to share our feelings about
Yeah,
this.
well, that's the thing is it stays separate if you take care of what was in the cup for the other person, pour it
Mhm.
out, run through the process, then you can work on yours, fill it up.
And then sometimes you have to
That,
take a break and keep pouring your own stuff out.
yeah,
And that's where what we talked about before about moving from monologue, where I'm talking and you're listening, I have the goods you need them, to dialogue makes all the difference in the world because you know
Yes.
you're going to have that opportunity to do that back with it
Yes.
instead of
Absolutely.
going extreme with that too. And that's an integral part of the whole thing is moving to that dialogue space and knowing that's going to go on with it too. Because otherwise, you're going to push back or you're going to throw the cup in their face or whatever because you don't think you're going to be able to share.
Yeah. And I think our history comes into this.
Mm.
Our past really does come in this. Are we used to being heard? Are we used to having our feelings shut down? Then that we have that internal expectation that's often not even conscious. It's kind of like, but then we kind of put it on them. It's like, well, you're not listening because you're not looking at me or you're looking at your phone or something like that. So why am I even talking to you? And you go into this whole thing instead of just like saying, I need you to listen. Is this a good time?
Yeah. And
Yes.
family of origin has a huge thing to do with that right there with it too.
Yeah.
Well, like with my family, it's like nobody listened to anybody, and it was the one who yelled the loudest won, even to the point of having a fist fight in the front yard. I'll make my point
Mhm.
one way or the other. So let's go
Yeah.
with it too. And if you've come out of that, and then you bring that to the space with a spouse, good luck. Because our tendency is going to be to do those same old things, which is pure monologue, unless you go here. And for me, that was a life changer in our relationship of being able to learn to go to dialogue. That if I'll go to that space, I actually will be listened to without having to get intense to the point of the front yard or whatever. That was a huge step for me.
Yeah. Super healing for you.
Super healing. It was super growing too. It was a
Yeah.
surrender to not, because my tendency was like, let me just attack you like I always have. And it's like, okay, no, you don't have to do that. Just back up and let's go here instead of here. Let's go to dialogue instead of monologue with it. And see
yeah.
what
If you just kept going with the cup thing, it'd be akin to your family is always covering it up. They're moving it around, and you're having to fight. Like just to even you got to knock them down just to pour. See, I poured it in. I won.
I'm pouring the cup. I'm moving the cup while I pour. You're moving the
Yeah,
cup while I pour it.
Oh.
That's
yeah.
how it feels.
If I
And then,
knock
like,
I
you
won.
out.
I won. It's in there, but it's not done because
It's
they
on the
didn't do
ground. Let me stomp on it a little more for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And then I think that we haven't mentioned that shame. So
Ooh,
we
yeah.
often have experienced that shame for the feelings that we had. When you shouldn't feel angry or you shouldn't feel that way or just get over it. And then
Can you comment on that about, because you grew up in a family where feelings were not cool with that too. How did that impact you, that shame?
I think I learned it really, really early because I was the youngest of seven. So there were lots of emotions and there really wasn't any room for my emotions. So I would always had to be happy. That's how I got my needs met, was just being happy, being cheerful, being encouraging and supportive of everyone around me. And yeah, my feelings always got under a rock until, adulthood when, that rock was like not heavy enough. And I often joke because of our career choices and things like that. Yeah, I'm a special ed teacher. We often did relief and development work. So I was always searching for a bigger rock, people with bigger problems than me.
24,000 ton ship is a good rock.
So kind of learning, and I think it was just like when life gets so overwhelming that you can't hide it under a rock anymore, and then you just like have this thing. But to me, I believe it was this process that was so healing, because it's the empathy piece where the healing happens.
Mhm.
It's when someone has listened to you, someone has validated your right to have these
Mhm.
experiences, and then being with it in you. It's like not so much walking in my shoes, because nobody really can walk in your shoes, but you can walk together. Oh yeah.
Yes.
And then so it's like you can walk together, and it's not like healing partners that often we feel like, oh, we have to fix them because I just fix everybody. That's what I do. And but it's that sense of healing partners is just journeying through this together, and I'm here with you. When Clay could like put down his stuff and really, really, okay, I know that your emotions aren't huge and big, but they're valid and that they're there.
And it's really hard for you to go there.
And
too.
yeah,
That's
it's
one thing
really hard
I got very
for me
aware
to go there
of.
until they're just so huge that you have to like
Mhm.
stomp your feet and scream and have a tantrum.
But instead of that, we went to dialogue.
Yeah.
And that was one of the cool things that happened out of that was she got a voice.
Yeah.
It was okay for her to share what she thought and felt about whatever with it too, and to be able to have that mirrored back and validated and then empathized with. That was a game changer for her because she'd never experienced that. She didn't get to have that growing up.
And to know that you're not alone with your feelings. I mean, that's so profound. Of just if you're having a feeling and you know that you don't have to shove it down under a rock. You have a partner who you can share that feeling with, and they're going to hear it and be with you on it. I mean, that to me is loneliness is the epidemic, right? And we can be lonely with being partnered, being in a family, being in a group. But it's the empathy piece that makes us connect to our humanity.
We did coaching with a lot of couples that they're real nice roommates, but they pretty much live parallel lives, not only in practice in their lives, but they do emotionally. And it's because that connection's not there, and they're not going to go there with it too. It's not safe enough to do it, and so they don't get to be those healing partners for each other.
Yeah.
So have you guys ever listened? I think I brought him up last time too. Chris Voss with the book Never Split the Difference. You ever heard of him?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's the FBI negotiator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he always goes into how he used what he called tactical empathy. Do you remember this?
About that.
Remember that part? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff he would talk about how that would be, and he would do things like he had things, and I don't know every one of them right off the top of my head, but he would do stuff like he would say, oh, that he'd let the the hostage while he's doing hostage negotiation, he goes, it sounds like, and he would do those various things like you're talking about, where he would use various stems to get the people to disarm them, to let them know that they're being heard, and that's how they could get these terrible situations under control. But he called it tactical empathy, which I thought was a interesting term.
That is interesting.
That'd be interesting.
Because I mean, going back to this is where collaboration comes from. Even though Chris Voss doesn't talk about collaboration, but he does talk about everybody coming to a solution that feels good to them. And for him, it's the people are alive and coming back. But somehow the negotiator or the other side has to feel like it's good for them too, to actually do that. And but I do think in a couple sense, it's like, or even in a business sense, I think this is where we really having empathy to why is this hard for you and why is this an issue, and understanding that before you go into even solution mode. And we were speaking, I think it was last weekend at a retreat for high level executives, and they were talking about, well, how does this work when you've got a problem that you have to solve? And it's like, well, you gotta know what the sides are. You gotta know what's happening. And the person has to feel heard and seen and valued and
And-
connected.
And the flip of that for them was, okay, how long are you taking to do damage control when you guys aren't connecting and relating and being able to solve a problem? How long is that taking for you? Oh, weeks at a time. Okay.
Right.
How about trying dialogue for 20 or 30 minutes and see if that makes a difference? Just a thought.
Right. Because, in order to get to problem solving, a lot of people want to jump right into that. Like you were saying, they want the time to be short on the front end. But if you spend all this time joining and connecting and empathizing and really, again, connecting on that human level, and we're a team and we are doing this together, then the problem solving that we all want to do, how do we get to figure out what to do with this problem? It happens so much more naturally, and it's a long-term investment that you're making into whatever relationship it is, whether it's a business relationship, romantic, with your child, or whatever. It's the joining that's incredibly important. You can't get anywhere if you don't do that. You just can't. You have to meet people where they are.
And two things are critical to do that, though. One is making it a must. We must do this, not a woulda, shoulda, coulda. It's got to be a must. And the other
Yeah.
thing, realizing what you're doing is resetting the culture in your marriage, your family, your business, whatever you're doing with it. You're creating a relational culture in that setting, whatever that looks like, because you're doing it a different way than you normally would. And that, when you got that understanding with it, it really makes a difference. It actually, in the business setting, I see it soften conversations and soften problem solving where, groups or people might be more intense. But it's true with couples too, because that's the goal here. We're creating that kind of space between each other as we're doing this.
Yeah. It's a good mic drop moment right
Good
there.
mic drop moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've created a case for empathy here.
Well, it is. I think it is kind of that key to understanding, connection, and collaboration.
And I just want to encourage folks to as they've listened to the whole series, don't leave the empathy part out. Sometimes we have a tendency, once we've heard and we've mirrored and we've got the information with it, to sometimes we forget to validate, and most especially sometimes we forget to empathize with it. And it's really important to do the whole process so that your partner really feels like you're connected at every level and understanding as much as possible at every level. And empathy is a big part of that. Everybody wants to be listened to. Everybody wants to be validated. Everybody wants to be empathized with. There's not a person on the planet, I don't care what culture you're in, that you don't want that. So just realizing, do the whole process to make sure that it's the most effective for you.
Yeah, because I think of the loneliness I was bringing up, and if no matter what happens during the day, if we know that we can come home to a partner who's going to empathize with us, it's like you're carrying that around as a shield all day long. No matter what happens to you, when I get home, I can talk to my partner about it. Or for instance, I'm in perimenopause, and so sleep sometimes can really be a struggle for me. And Jeff had made a habit of asking me first thing in the morning, how did you sleep? So even if I'm up in the night or I'm struggling, I'm like, he's going to care about that in the morning. And it actually soothes me and helps me get back to sleep because I know that he cares. And I mean,
Wow.
just carrying that around is so profound and so powerful. There is nothing like that.
Oh, I love that. Great job, Jeff. It's like
That's
that.
right.
Yeah, because that's a challenging thing. And if it yeah, and it's knowing that. Now you know that. And that how effective that is. Because it's the little things. It's not the big gigantic things. It's those
Yeah.
those little
Consistent small actions
yeah.
is what builds the momentum to have the relationship you want.
Yeah.
Well, this has been another awesome conversation, and really appreciate y'all's time to do this. I'm glad we got to get to be on your YouTube channel as well. And so for people who are looking for us, you can find us on makemorelovenotwar.com. And then Clay and Sonja, for people who are looking for you, where can they find you?
Heart Life Coaching, DFW, D as in dog, dfw.com.
Okay, awesome. Well,
All
thank
right.
you, audience, for being here and listening to
Yeah,
this.
Thank you so much. And we've enjoyed this. We'll have to come up with another topic to do a series on.
I think we'll do you next time. We'll interview you next time.
Okay, sounds good. We're down for it.
All right.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Oh.
We're done.